I don't know about anyone else, but whenever I'm walking through a home, whether I'm listing it or whether I'm bringing a buyer to, do a showing and walk through it for the first time, I'm not looking at the finishes. I'm not looking at the staging. I'm not looking at whatever someone picked off of Pinterest that week. I'm literally going through a mental checklist that I have built in my head over years of sifting through home inspections where small things turned into negotiation points and sometimes really expensive expenses for my buyers years down the line. And I think what most people don't realize is this. It's rarely one big issue that's going to cause problems in the home. It's usually a chain reaction of small things that have been neglected, whether intentionally or unintentionally over the years, that all kind of come together and cause one big issue later on down the line. So, today I am going to go through everything that I'm visually checking for whenever I enter into a home. And more importantly, what these issues could lead to later on if nobody addresses them. Obviously, whenever you first get to the home, you're first faced with the exterior. Well, I'm not looking at your landscaping. I'm not looking at your really cute solar panel lights. I am looking at the grading. I am looking at the foundation. I am looking at everything and anything that could go wrong. So, the first thing that I look at is simple. What's the water doing around your home? Because with almost every expensive problem that I've seen, after a home sale, usually starts with water going where it's not supposed to for a really long time. So immediately I'm checking the downspouts and I'm checking the gutters. Now, if the water is, coming out of the gutter and it's splashing around the foundation of the home, it's not going to cause a problem for a moment. But over time, that's going to lead to soil saturation, which is probably going to lead to crawl space or basement moisture, which usually turns into wood rot, and eventually some flooring or structural issues are going to show up in the home. So yeah, it's not dramatic today, but usually that's going to be your very first domino. How do you fix it? Super cheap. You can run to Lowe's and you can get a splash guard. They're like 15 bucks, or you can just extend your downspouts. I want to say they say to extend them either 5 or 6 feet away from the home. But again, would you rather spend $20, $30 right up front, or would you rather spend thousands down the line? Next, I'm going to look at the grading. Does the water flow towards the home or is it flowing away from the home? Because when the water is just sitting there pooling up around the foundation, it's not just sitting there harmlessly. It's eventually going to push water into your foundation. It's eventually going to push water into your crawl space, into your basement, and that's going to cause so many problems. Now, I'm going to talk about a very sensitive subject to myself: peeling paint. Yes, it's not going to look like a big deal, especially if it's just around, the top of the door frame or the top of the windows. But believe it or not, paint is going to be your first layer of defense against moisture. Once your barrier starts to fail, the wood is going to get wetter faster and it's going to stay wet longer. And that is where rot starts to begin instead of just your regular wear and tear weathering. The chain is fairly simple: paint failure, moisture intrusion, wood decay, and then you're going to have repairs. It takes literally no time at all to get out there with a scraper to scrape all the old peeling and chipped paint off and slap some new on there. Believe it or not, I'm keeping on, and I'm going to be looking to see if the soffit vents are painted over. They're supposed to let your attic breathe. So whenever you look up underneath of the gutters, there's going to be little, what looks like pinholes, and that's basically allowing your attic to sweat. Now, yeah, they may be ugly and you would have painted over them, but whenever you do that, that's going to trap the moisture inside of your attic space instead of letting it breathe out. And over time, that can lead to, again, moisture issues, and that can eventually lead to microbial growth, which everybody freaks out and calls mold. But it doesn't just stay in the attic. It's going to contribute to your roof wear. It's going to contribute to your insulation degradation. And it can even like lead to the insufficiency of your HVAC unit over time. So it's not really a your roof looks bad situation anymore. It's more of a your roof system isn't adequately venting the way that it should. And that can cause some serious issues. Then I'm going to start to look into the structure. And this is where I really start to kind of slow down because this is where homes really start telling their story. So I'm going to be looking really up close and personal with the wall cracks. Hairline cracks, yeah, that's usually pretty normal and it's due to the settling. So if you're looking like around the door frame, you can usually see it like right in the corners on the very top of the door. But when cracks are starting to form patterns or they're starting to widen, or you can see them like repeating in multiple areas, that's when I start thinking about the movement of the home, which is probably caused by water being in your basement or your crawl space, and it's causing the home to start to crumble. So the real question is not is it a crack or not? Is it an active crack or is it a stable crack? Now, majority of the time, like I said, these hairline cracks are completely normal, and when an inspector calls it out on their home inspection, that can be expected. But if you've hired a good home inspector, their job is going to be to call that out and tell you that if you're really worried about it, that you need to probably contact a structural engineer to really get out there and get face to face with that crack to see what's going on with the foundation. Now, I'm not a big girl, so I can fit into some pretty tight spaces, and believe it or not, I've entered into a crawl space before. Now, whenever I'm looking into a crawl space, I'm looking immediately for the vapor barrier, the big plastic sheet that goes down on the ground. I'm looking to see if the insulation underneath of the home is hanging or if it's missing altogether. I'm looking to see if there's any moisture, of course, back to water, or if there's any standing water. And sometimes you can see that there used to be evidence of termites. They have these little brown tubes that kind of go up the face of the wood. Those are called mud tubes. Now, a lot of times, if the termites have been, taken care of, for some god awful reason, they don't knock the mud tubes out. But at least in being able to see that, you can know that at some point there was evidence of termites. Now, all of this matters because everything that's going on beneath the home, underneath of the home, is going to eventually make its way up top and be visible where you're living every day. And the cause and effect chain here is very direct. You have your moisture, like always, you're going to have your wood softening, and you're going to have pest activity, and that's going to cause your structure to weaken over time, which is, like always, going to be a very big ticket item. Okay, so once I'm finally done outside and I make my way into the home, one of the most common things that I'm going to check is the soft wood underneath of the sinks. So all you literally do is open up the sink, whether it be in the kitchen or the bathroom, take your hand and just gently press on the bottom of the cabinet. If it's soft, that usually means that there's been some water exposure that's happened, probably from an active leak. Now, that doesn't mean that you have an active leak. It just means that at some point there has been water that has dripped down enough to soften that wood. So it's kind of like a material damage problem. But that is the important distinction, because the material damage doesn't mean that it just happens. It means that it has been there, and it's probably been there for quite some time. And believe it or not, I kind of consider myself a plumber because I know the difference between an S trap and a P trap. So, whenever you're looking at the drain traps under the sink, and what I mean by that is the pipe that comes out and kind of has a little curve to it, S traps aren't always going to be catastrophic. What they do is they kind of like siphon water out of the trap, which breaks a seal that keeps the sewer gas out of the home. So, the chain is that if you have an improper trap design, you're going to have a lost water seal, and then you're going to have like a potential gas intrusion. It's usually a fairly simple correction that can be done by a plumber or like a general handyman, and it's not going to be a huge problem in the home, but it's probably going to end up stinking and eventually lead to like some backup, and we do not want that. Going back to my plumber expertise, I'm also checking out the water heater, not the hot water heater, the water heater. On those, I'm checking to see if you have a drip pan, which is basically like, it looks like a little plate that goes around the bottom. It's maybe about this high off the ground, and it literally just, you set the water heater inside of it. So in the event that it does start leaking, it's going to leak into that pan before actually getting out into the floor. Again, we know that water is bad. And I'm also going to check for your TPR valve discharge. So what that does is you have a water heater and it has all of this hot water heated. Well, what happens if too much pressure gets built up? It's going to explode. With that, there's some type of safety feature in it that if it gets to whatever PSI, whatever it may be, I don't know, Google it. Instead of it exploding all over the place, it's going to come out through that valve and explode going down below. I want to say that there's a safety standard that it has to be a minimum of maybe 6 inches off the ground, but sometimes they actually run them all the way through your floor into the crawl space. So without the two of those, if you have a small leak or if there's a pressure issue that doesn't get contained, it's going to get absorbed into your flooring, your drywall, or even your framing over time. So it's not really about the water heater itself, it's about what happens if it fails. Now, one of the biggest ticket items, your HVAC, which is like the comfort system that usually becomes a cost system. So on there, I check them because on the side of them, there's going to be a label that tells you what type of refrigerant is being used. And so older systems are going to be a lot more expensive to repair and replace just because there's different phase outs to the type of refrigerant that goes in those. So, like with the newer systems, you'll see that the refrigerant type, I believe it's an R454B. Someone will correct correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure. But with that, it's a refrigerant that was updated. I want to say it's kind of like a propane material, but it's extremely flammable. But it's a lot better for our ozone layer. But with that, where it is extremely flammable, the newer systems are supposed to have a shut off safety feature in that so that it doesn't leak into the home and cause an explosion. It sounds a lot scarier than it was supposed to. I'm sorry. But with that, you can also tell if it doesn't have the refrigerant label on there, it usually has a big warning sticker. So it's usually your pretty safest bet to see whether it's a newer or an older system. Now, if it has an older type of refrigerant, that's no big deal. Just know that when it does come time to be replaced, it's going to be a lot more cost efficient for you to get the newer version versus the older one, just because, again, those refrigerants are starting to phase out and they're actually really hard to come by. It's not immediate, but it's absolutely something that I tell my buyers and sometimes my sellers to factor in with the home ownership cost. And speaking of HVAC, I'm actually literally going through the home and seeing if any of the returns are blocked. So if the return vent, which is usually a vent that's, facing outward on your wall, if it's blocked, that's going to affect your airflow. And when your airflow drops, the sister is going to have to work a lot harder and a lot longer to keep up with it to achieve that same temperature. And so that's going to lead to higher energy use. It's going to increase the wear on the components within the HVAC system itself. And it's more than likely going to reduce the lifespan of your unit over time. So don't think of it as just, restricted or bad airflow. You want to think of it as like accelerated HVAC aging. And now to put on my electrician hat and also kind of my appraiser hat. So this is where I kind of start thinking like as an agent, an inspector, and an appraiser all at the same time, is because other than an appraiser determining the value of the home, they're also going to be inspecting safety features, if that makes sense. So one thing that I notice so often is breaker panels. Whenever you open them up, you have your breakers, and sometimes there's little holes in them. And I don't mean, a hole like you punched a hole through. It's just an open breaker, which you would think that that's no big deal, right? But you have to think from an appraiser's point of view, and you have to think safety first. Well, it's usually not a major repair issue, but they're going to represent exposed points in a system that's supposed to be protected. Now, if you're anything like me and you think about what can my child get into that's going to kill them the fastest, this is one of those that an appraiser is going to think the same as well. You want to make sure that you run to Lowe's and spend your $5 and you put one in there to cover it up. At minimum, you want to make sure that all of your bedrooms and even your kitchen has a smoke detector. And believe it or not, in some transactions, I've seen, missing smoke detectors move from a recommendation to a required repair, depending on the loan type. Oddly enough, I actually keep a couple of spare smoke detectors in the back seat of my car. If there's gas in the home, the next thing on my list is going to be a carbon monoxide detector. I want to say that they have to be placed within 15 feet from where the gas is coming out. So whether that be your water heater, your stove, your fireplace, you need to have one within the home within 15 feet. Because believe it or not, carbon monoxide isn't something that you can detect easily. It's literally called the silent killer. Next up on the exterior as well as the interior are missing handrails. If you have, I believe it's 4 steps, 4 risers, you're going to need a graspable. And the key word here is graspable. A graspable handrail that you can safely get from the top to the bottom. Because again, the appraiser is looking for safety. So if you have no support, you have an increased fall risk, which is a safety flag, which is going to be a potential lender requirement. It takes no time to install them, just put them up. So really at the end of the day, I'm not really evaluating if the home is good or bad. I'm looking at patterns of maintenance over time. So it's kind of like everything that I see gets filtered into 3 categories. Your green is going to be your simple, cheap cosmetic issues. Yellow is going to be things that you need to monitor or it may cost something in the near future. And red is always going to equate to anything moisture/water related, safety related, or structural related. Because homes really aren't the problem. It's a matter of how they've been maintained since they've been owned. And once you really start seeing things this way, you stop looking at things like the finishes of the rooms and you kind of start seeing them as like systems that have been maintained to stay ahead of the problems, or a system that's not been maintained and is going to slowly accumulate problems over the near future. Again, I've closed over 100 deals and I've seen just about every problem imaginable. But at least for the time being, these are the ones that I'm seeing day in and day out. And I'm actually going to attach some examples of those on the video itself. If anybody has any questions, any comments, or has anything else to add, I would love to see them in the comments below. But that is it for today, and I will see y'all next time.